Hello, my name is Scheherazade Deborah Robinson. I attend Full Sail University online. This is my paper on the New York Times Company versus Sullivan and Gertz versus Welch. New York Times versus Sullivan. Who are the parties to the case and what are the facts that led to their dispute? L.B. Sullivan was the commissioner in Montgomery, Alabama in 1964, who the New York Times written about in a negative way. It was not only written about the police department, but it reflected towards L.B. Sullivan himself. The New York Times wrote harshly about the police brutality against the African American civil rights, which in turn reflected on L.B. Sullivan because he was the police commissioner. So being that Sullivan was being slandered in the paper, this is why the lawsuit came about. L.B. felt that his reputation was damaged because he was the commissioner of the police department at the time, and he allowed all this to happen while he was in charge. Sullivan also got a witness, which is a former employee, that made a statement that he would not want to be associated with someone who could possibly do what the ad stated. Why did Sullivan feel his reputation was damaged by the New York Times publication? Sullivan was the commissioner of the police department in 1964. During that time of the publication of the ad, Sullivan, being the commissioner of the police department, was responsible for everything that they did. And because he had the last say, it also didn't help his reputation when his ex-employee made that statement that he wouldn't want to work with anyone that was described that way in the article. What must the plaintiff show to prove defamation? Malice had to be proven by Sullivan, which he never showed proof of. When Sullivan had the case brought to court in Alabama, he never showed malice. In other words, he had to show how the ad was targeted against him and how it hurt him. What was a U.S. Supreme Court decision and why did it make that decision? The U.S. Supreme Court voted unanimously for the New York Times. This decision was made because Sullivan never proved malice to the courts. Also, the First Amendment protects the New York Times because of the freedom of press along with the freedom of expression. The New York Times uses that First Amendment from known as freedom of expression because they were simply expressing their opinion about what was going on with the civil rights movement. It was not targeting Sullivan directly. Gertz versus Welch. Who are the parties to the case? Is a petitioner a private person or a public figure? The parties are Elmer Gertz, who is also the petitioner and a private person. Being a lawyer in past cases does not make Gertz a public figure. Public persons have more access to public communication. They also have more opportunity to go against false accusations. What were the alleged defamatory statements about Gertz in the American Opinion article? Being that Elmer Gertz was the lawyer for the Nuccio family, the American Opinion article said that the information against Kopp was false and that his prosecution was part of the communist campaign against the police, making this an alleged defamatory statement against Gertz. What was done to confirm these allegations against Gertz? The editor of the American Opinion magazine made no effort to verify that the accusations were true. He just took the word of the author and placed the petition photo under the headlines that read, Elmer Gertz of Red Gill harasses Nuccio. Then placed the magazine on newsstand nationwide. How do you think these allegations affected Gertz's reputation? I believe that these allegations destroyed the career of Elmer Gertz as a lawyer. People who were deemed communists during the time were basically blackballed from society. It was hard to get work being listed as a communist. What would you have done differently from Welch to avoid the lawsuit? I would have made it part of my editor's job description to make sure that the facts of the story is true. Each story that is written about someone's real life, it needs to be investigated before being released into the public. The Arizona Defamation Law. In Arizona, the elements of a defamation claims are a false statement concerning the plaintiff, the statement was defamatory, the statement was published to a third party, the requisition fault on the part of the defendant, and the plaintiff was damaged as a result of the statement. Morris v. Warren, 160, Arizona, 5562, Arizona Court, App, 1988. How can you relate what you learned from the Sullivan-Gertz case to your future work in the communication industry? I can relate what I learned from the two cases by making sure my facts are straight and real. I would make sure what I said and did is true and not made up. It is not worth making up a story to get stories and articles sold. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.